Hello Flickering Myth family and welcome to our channel. My name is EJ Marino and we have a movie review today. I'm going to be jumping into the new Wes Anderson film, The French Dispatch. I don't know if the stars aligned or if the galaxy was sending me a message or I was just in the mood for a weird movie, but I quite liked The French Dispatch. This was the most Wes Anderson movie I've seen in quite some time. Hell, this feels like an exercise of how to overdose in Wes Anderson. This is so much of the filmmaker's usual style, which is a bit hit or miss for me. I'm not always a big fan of Wes Anderson, but that's okay. He makes a very distinct style of film for his very hardcore, dedicated fan base, and every now and then, maybe like a couple casuals like me can fall in love with the film. I did like the Fantastic Mr. Fox. The Royal Tenenbaums was pretty impressive, but the French Dispatch is a little bit of everything that I like from Wes Anderson. The cast is strong, the dialogue is absolutely insane, the sets, the overall feel is really great, but what really stood out to me in this film is it actually had something to say. I'm not trying to discredit other Wes Anderson films, but sometimes they do feel like quirky for the sake of quirky. This movie is very strange, but I actually really understood the messages, especially in the first two little chapters that we have. The film's broken up to three separate stories. The first two, I was really invested into the story, and I thought they had a lot to say. The third one, while heavily entertaining and completely bizarre and fun, it wasn't as emotional for me. It didn't resonate with me as deeply, but those first two stories were really impressive and really carried me through The French Dispatch to honestly kind of enjoying this quite a bit. Summing up any Wes Anderson film can be a difficult task, especially when it's something as weird as The French Dispatch, which has a very unique story and a very unique story structure of how it tells its weird separate little vignettes. So I'll try to sum this up as best as I can. Bill Murray is an editor of a newspaper called The French Dispatch. It's in this weird town called Liberty, Kansas that is completely French inspired. It is a strange world. When they were introducing here, I was just like, yeah, I think I would move in here. I think I kind of like this very strange land. So he's the editor of The French Dispatch, and he allows other artists to come in and tell their stories, and he serves as the editor. He tries to kind of get them to push them to certain stories. He tries to help them out. Hell, even in the final segment, he really pulls the core of a story out from one of his writers. I thought that was very interesting, and I was just like, oh, the editor of this story is not the evil looming villain as so many journalistic stories can be. We know, look, I work for a website. Sometimes you get a little mad at your editor. I like that they didn't really take it out. They explained that artist-editor relationship, and I thought that was great. So each one of these stories that we get to see are news articles that are presented in this newspaper. The first one has Benicio del Toro and Adrien Brody. They are a weird relationship. Benicio is a prisoner who is also an artist. Adrien Brody is the man trying to sell his art and representing him. This is very interesting. There's a lot of conversations about art versus artist, how to sell your art, how to handle it, how when you don't want to create, sometimes people force you to create. I like this, and it has some amazing stuff. I mean, Queen Tilda Swinton is in here as well, doing the Lord's work. She does some heavy lifting in this first segment, but overall, I thought Benicio was a standout here. He was so weird, so interesting. His character, I thought Moses was a very intriguing one, and I kept being like, I like this artist. Even when he's being the most banana cuckoo pants he can be, I understood him. I got his messaging. I was really enamored by his whole vibe. I like this first segment a lot. The prison setting, it gets loud and bombastic. There's so many weirdness stuff. I really was kind of intrigued, and I was just like, okay, what's the second chapter going to be? And this is the one featuring Timothée Chalamet and Frances McDormand. I saw some things in this that I did not expect to see. This middle section seems to be the most polarizing one. I quite liked it. I thought there was a lot of kind of talks about the individualism of kids and they wanting to be revolting. There's also some idealism that they think they're going to cause a revolution, and in the long run sometimes you are dumb and fall off radio towers because that's how you are. I liked this one. I thought this was really interesting. The relationship between these two was very strange as well. I was just like, oh, Francis and Timothée, like, working together? There's a cute little love story at the center of this as well. This is one of the more weirder ones, but I thought it was very interesting. The chess aspect to this was really good. I thought this said a lot about the youth in revolt. I thought this had a lot to say about, look, we want to do things, we want to rebel, but sometimes you're not smart enough, sometimes you're not capable of doing it, and the way you have to manipulate, the way sometimes you might have to sell out, which kind of plays into the other segment as well. So I was just like, this is really good. Then the third one comes, and it's Jeffrey Wright's big centerpiece, and I love Jeffrey Wright. I think he's a talented actor, and he does well. He's a writer who is supposed to do a piece on a chef, but it leads him to be in the middle of a hostage situation. There are some crazy gun shootouts that he has to be in the middle of. This is truly, he's supposed to interview just a chef, and it leads to something wilder than that. I was okay on this one. I got messages from the first two. I was like, okay, I get the art versus artist, I get the youth in revolt. This one, there's a family aspect to it. There's a outsider trying to fit into society aspect, but this one wasn't as emotionally impactful, but it also happened to be the most entertaining out of all of them. There's an animated segment in this one that I thought was beautiful, to the point where I kind of wanted this whole segment to be animated. I would have been in love with that. I think that would have fit the weird production design, the weird aesthetic of the film overall. But look, all three of these kind of work together. Then we kind of go back to the wraparound story of Bill Murray's character and all his writing staff and him being very Bill Murray. There's not a lot of him here, so if you're not a fan of him like I am, I'm not the biggest fan of him at times, but he was presented well here. He fits into the Anderson crew. I love the Anderson crew here, but there's also some ones that I don't normally get to see. I know Willem Dafoe has been in them, but he's not always in them. Jeffrey Wright, Timothée Chalamet, these are actors. I'm sure Ronan. These are like weird, fun people that Anderson has picked up that I thought he worked well within these weird stories. I like the overall vibe of this, and I know people are not going to. I know that Rotten Tomatoes score is somewhat in the middle, but for me, this was an enjoyable ride, and these three stories really kept me interested. Before we wrap up, we do have to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is Wes Anderson's style. Oh my goodness, I call this an overdose of Anderson, and that is truly what this is. Every quirk, every little gimmick, every charm, every little moment that he likes, it is included in this film. It's wild. From the moving sets, to the animation bits, to the very square kind of aesthetic, that like 4:3 ratio, I believe it is. It might be a little bit different than that. I'm not a big ratio person, so please, film heads, do not attack me. But yeah, all of that is here, and it's interesting. I can see why people are very thrown off by it. I feel like the Grand Budapest Hotel is even more. I think Moonrise Kingdom is even more Wes Anderson, where I thought this was very artistic. I thought he kind of advanced his style here. I was really into it. I was really amazed by those little quirks, those dialogue. Oh my goodness, to be a Wes Anderson actor, to get that script and be like, I have to say all this in one take. What? Like, it's stuff like that that I really do admire. No matter how I felt about the story, which I do like, but no matter how I felt about it, I looked at this film, looked at the production design, looked at how it was executed, and I admire that. Much like another film, I wasn't a big fan of Dune, but I admire the production, the work it takes to craft that kind of film. I always admire that. Same thing with The French Dispatch. I liked what they tried to accomplish here. I happen to like the story more than some of the other films I just mentioned. Sorry to all those fans. But yeah, I thought this was executed well. It had something to say, which I don't feel every Anderson film does. Overall, I can't believe I liked something that is this extremely Wes Anderson. It could, like I said in the beginning, it could just be the universe, it could be the mood I was in, but I was very, very willing to be on this journey of weirdness, and Anderson really held my hand through it. Sometimes he thrust you into his strange world. Here, he kind of guided you. He said, I know this is going to be weird, but let's have fun, and I did. Alright everyone, that is it for my review of Wes Anderson's The French Dispatch. I happen to enjoy this film, shocking as I may be, and I know there are some people who passionately hate this. I know some people who are going to absolutely go crazy on it, but what are you, where are you at? Let me know your feelings down in the comments below. Subscribe to Flickering Myth, because we make videos like this every single week, and give me a thumbs up if you did enjoy. Alright everyone, let's talk about Wes Anderson movies and The French Dispatch down below.